I came into the Stellar Nations, and the Stellar Nations is more like coming in from the inside. And what they are is they're uh, sound frequencies put into galactic myths from Antares. And you're literally reading these myths, and it's like they're holding the subconscious energetic patterns of everything, and we know, like in the third dimension, we think it's in time, past, present, future. The first it happened that the great felines were exiled and all, and then we see a linear progression, but we know that really isn't true, that there's all these energetic frequencies happening at once. And it's really almost a matter of, well, where is our consciousness so that it resonates with this or that, and how has it pulled it through? So what the Antares code really is a reflection of the journey of our consciousness, the trajectory of it. Like, how have we engaged with these energy patterns, which are really personified in the soul families. But so what happens is, it's like this is all in our subconscious as we're living here as 3D humans, incarnational distillates of our celestial selves. And you start reading the Stellar Nations, and it seems kind of simple on the page. But what happens is, it's like you're on this in this inner cave of your subconscious, and you're just sort of feeling through, and suddenly something emerges, an energy pattern that you really know because you've used it, or you've been part of it in such a deep way. Uh, all the energy patterns are in us, but we have lineages of more involvement in one soul family or another. But what I would like to do, though, before we dive in, if I could just take a few minutes to set up the context of what the human is in the Stellar Nations.
Oh, yeah.
That be okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I really want to talk about this in that context, I think. Well, we'll see where it goes, but
I love it. I love it. And I think it's important to keep bringing it back to we're here in this human body, and so many people keep reaching out to some stellar nation. Definitely, please dive in the importance
I'm
of,
actually going to talk about the cosmic human, right?
yeah.
So we're going to talk about this as the the divine mind is, has a dream. And in the Stellar Nations, what we find with the cosmic human, it's a dream of this divine mind. And the divine mind can can hatch these beautiful eggs of ideas, but the divine mind itself, or source, is just inert. So it's having all these, it's birthing all these ideas. So with the birthing of the cosmic human, um, this description has us in this huge golden chamber of birth, and the cosmic human is birthed as the uh, really as the face of the creator in a feminine and masculine form. The original cosmic human couple, it's the god and the goddess, and it's the complementarity. And then in this chamber of birth, the creator says, well, this is further what my dream is for you. This is what you are. I am going to give you, I want you to be experiencers, because I can't. I mean, I'm inert. So I want you to be experiencers, and I want you to be chalices holding 13 ways of experiencing, 13 forms and frames of experiencing, if you will. So that's what we've got, like we know the Pegasus and the unicorn. And as it's in the chamber of birth, the humans are literally blessed, like one at a time. It's like flames are coming out of this golden space that's the divine mind, and putting them in the chalice. That the human couple is receiving it with awe, because the human couple's not hasn't hasn't gone through any drops yet. um, but when you think about it, all these different nations are ways of experience. And so we get to be the unicorn. The unicorn says, oh, you know what, human, you can be a dreamer too. And then you get the bird nation, and you get your allies in the bird nation, the fairies and the elves. Oh, that's part of you, and that's going to help you manifest from the invisible to the visible. It's going to help you manifest your dreams. So we can go through all the nations, and they all have kind of a way of experiencing that is us as humans. Messengers, teachers, um, warriors, divine, the winged lion? How do we use power? How do we just channel the divine through us? So in total, that's the gift of being the cosmic human. And what the creator said is, now I want, first of all, you're full of light. You are light. You are a face of me. But I want you, your assignment is to be experiencers with all these wonderful forms and frames I've given you, like kind of the paints. Go have fun.
Mhm.
But I want you to go into, I want you to discover your light by going into the deepest dark. And I want you to have that journey. And at the end of it, I want you to bring it back to me. That's your gift to me because I can't experience it. But I heard you say, like maybe, I don't know, 5 months ago, I was listening to a lecture that you had, like, Becca, and you were saying something about you were really into the down and dirty and like, God, why would the Galactics let it go that far? And you said because we want to get it at the root. We want to extract at the root. And but what I took from that is, and in this context that I'm trying to put forth here, I feel what we're really trying to, what the creator's imagination is creating the ability to have spirit run through matter and have matter and spirit be and it's almost like the creator is creating a body for itself.
Mhm.
And what we see in matter is, as densification comes and more identity comes away from the creator, we see what happens with the temptations and the lapses. And it's interesting, you even think about each different nation. So, like, for instance, I feel like each one of them's kind of a experiment in spirit and matter. Like you run the Pegasus is very fluid. It's a little bit more spirit than matter, and that has to do with their lapse. They were just like, ah, let me have a little time out to just know who I am, not put a costume on and be, so incredibly wonderfully fluid. And then you get like the dragons, for instance, right? They get this incredible command of matter, right? And that's so tempting that they misuse it. So I where I'm going with this is I feel like we're in this just grand experiment, and we have to remember, and I think you've said this many times too, what we really are. And that if we do achieve this remembering of the truth of what we are, that we can root out that um, quality of being tempted by matter. We can root out that kind of lower octave thing and become able to be, well, to let creation run through us, but still be in somewhat of a matter state. Or I don't know what it's going to look like. But the other thing I feel, and I'll just finish with this, I feel like when the creator made the god and the goddess, the masculine and the feminine, there was also the charge to make those two influences in us complementary, to know the complementarity of them, not the the fight of them. Um, And there was also the charge to balance and harmonize these 13 influences. So I feel like when you start thinking about what the god and the goddess are as complementarity, it's a model for what the creation wants with creation, what the creator wants with creation, because there's that back forth. And it's literally like the heart goes lub, dub. But the creator, I feel, wants that relationship with its creation, that we're constantly call and response. So there's one more point, and then we'll just open it up. Oh, let me think. I lost the point. It will come back because I want to make it as part of this.
I love exactly where you're going with this because it is all about being able to experience what, and even if we look at it from some of the Vedic teachings, it's really being to experience the eternal nature of oneness versus actually stepping into the Maya or the illusion. That there has to be a balance, but then when you know yourself within the illusion, there starts to become this dance that you can have within creation. And I think it's amazing because the stellar nations actually takes us to an expanded perspective, that we have the archetypes, even say the archetypes of our astrological wheel, that they are actually pushing through, but they're coming from spectras further out than our astrological wheel, showing us yet even more archetypes that we're connected to as these kind of fractals and more fractals, that we get to embody all of the unique aspects of creation within self. So I think you said it very, very beautifully.
Yes, and the archetypes, I mean, what they would be saying, the stellar influences are showing us our cosmic history.
Mhm.
So, and it's so it's more that ongoingness and like so when we really know our Antares code, we start getting the sense of the why a lot in the way we our life is and how we designed it. And I know the last point I wanted to make before we start talking about Alpha Centauri is um, what every nation has a lapse where they got at some point, they explored, let's call it free will or densified enough to want to check out things and so kind of left their mission, so to speak, or their connection with the creator. And what the cosmic every nation but the dolphins, what the cosmic humans lapse is because we were given so much, literally all this light, contain it all, be co-creators. um there was the shadow of superiority came on, and there came a time where it was the feeling was, I want to be all these things, get out of here, so it was literally pushed out. And in the cosmic history, if you go, I don't know, this is metaphor, right? It's myth. um so we're talking about energy patterns. I'm not asking anybody to like with the stellar nations, I don't think we're saying believe it as this history per se, it's just it's the metaphor. But and it probably has shadows of actually things that transpired in, density. But what the cosmic humans did is they were given some control of the elements, as were the dragons. And there became a big jealousy thing and a big war, and elemental war on, sounds like on Earth at some point. And literally the humans eventually won, but it excluded everything out. And in the stellar nations, then the Earth fell in its consciousness at that point too. Just Gaia Gast was rent. She actually is rent on the Pacific Ocean. And a lot of the nations just kind of disappeared into the center of the Earth. Um, and part of the mythology is that why Lemuria came along in that location later was to start to be a healing of that. But at any rate, so I just wanted to set up the context as we start about this, we start talking about all this other stuff. Um, what are we trying to work out? What are there's a gift if we can work it out
Mm.
in this in what is so dark. I mean, it's interesting because what's so dark now, we have to understand it is part of us. It's a mirror for us. And what it's showing us is this is what it looks like when you don't take initiations, when you don't go into renewal, because the creator is asking for constant renewal. So I'm going to stop there and we can go on to however you want to structure it to talk about Alpha Centauri and what your perspective is and what I could bring in what the stellar nations is. And you know what? No one star really, it has a meaning. It's a learning center, and the stars really are, they're worlds, they're sentient worlds. In the stellar nations, the thought is really that we have soul aspects living concurrently on those stars, and we're all one with it, right? And we're getting informed by them. And when we make actions on the earth, especially to do something that's hard to do, to turn around a pattern, that goes back up to the star. So there's this huge evolution process happening in our physical distillates as really as agents for this larger collective light body to grow, which is where I kind of start thinking, oh my gosh, we could get to the point where the creator could have a body.
Yeah, and I think Alpha Centauri, I'm excited that we're diving into this today because of all of the different stars. in the ones that we could be looking at. It's actually one of the closest to Earth.
I know.
It's so close to us, and it's very relevant. It's actually playing out in our Earth history right now. You made a comment that I want to put a pin on. Maybe we will come back to it. And that is, as you said, there was a battle between the humans and the dragons because the humans also had command of the elements. And then you made the comment that the humans won. And I might put uh, maybe a quotation or a parentheses in there with the question, did they? Because we know that we have these different species that are influencing our very politics, our very earth dramas that are going on in this time. And I think it's coming very clear that, you know, there's an awareness that the dragons or the reptilian races were here on this planet before we were.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge interesting pin that we might be able to put within there because I think it's not about us winning as it moves forward into the future as we look at what is currently going on the planet, but is how are we balancing all of this rather than fighting against and making something good or bad, right or wrong. And I'm even going to pin in the word in here for us to even kind of just put in the back of our consciousness alpha and omega,
Mhm.
because that is going to have everything to do with alpha Centauri.
Yes, and I actually, perhaps the use of the word win is very specific to in that incident. It looked like they won because the dragons, the earth sort of became, well, the humans managed to push everything out. But here's an interesting thing. So in the stellar nations, there's also, since these patterns, the stellar delegates, the 13 stellar delegates came to Bay and Anaco in 2005 and asked them to go to Antares and expand in and put this information down for the purpose of moving from a planetary consciousness to a stellar consciousness. But since then, every year there's been like a coming forth of energies from the stellar nations, and it's been coming into the collective consciousness, the greater stories, and which have a lot more to do with the lapses. So the energy that's returned in 2024 is the healed great feline and the healed dragon on so the two warrior nations. Now they're healed on a galactic level, and it's a beautiful story, but it's really pressing on us to heal it on the physical level. That's what happens. But it's exactly what you said. What the realization and the healing of the dragons is it's the use of power, which is what the initiation of Vega is on, is not about, sparring. I'm going to win. I'm going to beat you. What the realization has been is we use this sparring to continually have whatever is coming to us be a catalyst towards us developing our own light. So that's the healed. There's two aspects of the dragon coming back in as far as dragon masters in the stellar nations. There's a healed quality of mercy because there was so much that happened when the dragon leader in Khan fell into power and the dragons are very much more hierarchical and almost like an army and very disciplined. And so many dragons followed without realization sometimes, or they were power hungry, but there are many reasons. So there's so many, these are parts of our soul that are injured, right? And think about it. This is the part of us that stands up for divine will. So we're just getting back in touch with what that is. But so I want to say, I agree with you totally. And it's actually interesting because Bay and Anako said they've seen in the Orion there's a big nebula. They've seen new stars forming because this is the consciousness that's growing and it's becoming a star. Because in the actual cradle of the dragons was the heart of the Orion constellation, Omega Orionis. That exploded when Khan, the leader of the dragons, uh, really left his mission. So go ahead then, please. I'm just agreeing with you and saying it all laces in the stellar nations, and it's actually the energy of this year, everything you just said, which is, well, that's another fascinating thing because what you start to realize, the eighth virtue of the dragon is called ruthlessness. Like, what do you take out of creation when it's harming creation? And I feel like there's been an evolution. I don't know if ruthlessness is the right word in a sense, because you discernment is certain things go. But what's our responsibility as, this piece of our soul? I mean, I used to think of it, we have to use our mind, we have a sword, we have to be so discerning and mature to decide to cut something out. But now I'm understanding, wait a minute, if we're becoming the higher aspect of what the dragon has learned and is returning to us, we're using these catalysts to become more and more and more light. And then we don't even have to use the sword because if some substance comes towards us that can't resonate with that light, it will literally disintegrate or it just can't be there. And that's actually shown to us in the book Calling You, which is a it's it came in 2012, the year of the bears, and it's the it's showing the trajectory of the Bear Nation and the Christ consciousness on Earth, at least from Lemuria through now.
Mhm.
And Jesus and Mary had three children in different ways, but one of them, Josephus, was just divine, just for divine will. And during Roman times, with all those politics, they would often try to kill him. So they'd come into his room at night, they would fall dead on the floor because he was just holding so much light. He didn't have to do a thing. So that's just an example of it.
Well, definitely, and I love, maybe we can kind of go through a little bit of Alpha Centauri just a little bit. And maybe let me share a graph really quick just to kind of play with this. And let me share a screen. And this is actually from the True Sky software within here that we can actually start to see Centaurus here. And it really does look like this horse. And I think, there's a few different ways we can go, especially since you're bringing up the energy of the Christ consciousness within here. Maybe if you want to touch in a little bit just to even some of this energy around the Southern Cross, because let me maybe press up it this way. As we know that each of these stars holds a ray like doorways. They're doorways into other worlds or other realms of our consciousness. That Alpha Centaurus, I'm going to actually kind of split this as two different words, and we'll hopefully get into why I am doing this. But if we have the energy of Cent, which is going to be the energy of a centaur,
Mhm.
the half horse, half man being a centaur. Well, the centaurs are also connected to the catastrophe and the asteroid belt, so the explosion of Maldek. They're also going to have a tie into that to such as Chiron or Chiron, however we say it. But the energy of Chiron is a centaur, and that many of the asteroids within the belt are these wounded healers. Well, part of this comes from a story, and I know the Stellar Nations goes into it quite a bit. And the story of the centaur here, Chiron, he accidentally through his back foot tramples or kicks or steps on the Southern Cross, which is the Christ
Accidental.
consciousness bears.
It wasn't accidental at all, though.
Okay, go
But
for
we'll
it.
get into that. But yeah, go ahead.
So as we even get to connect this, I want to kind of show two more pictures in here. So we have over here another kind of name for it. Uh, it goes by Tolmus. It also goes by Rigel. Kentaurus is all Alpha Centauri. There's a couple different names that Alpha Centauri does go by, and even in the Stellar Nations, I think they call it Bungula
Yeah, it's a very old name for it.
within there. So it's going to be this yellow star within here. And we can see this kind of in the front. It's very close to Hadar, which is Beta Centauri, which I think a lot of individuals also have a resonance, so that'll come in. And if we were to even play just a little bit to the energy of just kind of up above here, I'll show it from this particular image. So we're going to see again the foot of it. The Southern Cross would be in here. We have Alpha Centauri right here. It's a system. It's a star system. And then we're going to have up here something that's referred to as Omega Centauri. And it's not necessarily a star within the centaur, but it's more of another doorway or portal into another world. And as we get to understand this is going to play hugely for our awareness into the energies of a lot of the fallen angelics in conversations within the Voyagers materials, especially when you look at all of the Alpha Omega
Mhm.
vibrations has to do with this, and it has to do with these energies harnessing a particular portal. And I'll even just kind of briefly, and we can come back to this because I just want to start to just tie in some of these, because a lot of individuals are really starting to kind of get into starting to look at the quantumness of our map. So we can see this as the Alpha Omega. Both of these 100% have to do with the Centaurus systems, but they open up into doorways. And one of these things is to recognize that is each of these circles are actually probabilities or worlds or timelines. They are
Mhm.
probabilities, but when quantum physics in nature gets harnessed, and this is, I think, also important to understand about, as you're probably going to be tying in with the dragons, is they knew the elements, they knew the structures of creation, they knew the foundations of creation, and so they were able to create technologies and different things that basically through gravitational fields, people ask all the time, how does a system go into fall? Many times these falls happen through an explosion of a sun, an explosion of a star, which creates a black hole. That black hole pulls whatever's in that system into a black hole or into a phantom system. And so we actually have the alpha, and then over here the omega. I know it's a lot. So that's why I colored it to give a detail in here. But when we see this creates a Vesica Pisces, which is one of the primary symbols within creation. It does have a lot to do with, even if it starts to go into a lot of like the Christianity teachings and these kinds of things. And part of this is the bi-Veka or the bi system. So the polarized system of how do we take things out of the Trinity field of how something is within its Christic eternal light, eternal flame, and eternal form. So when we think of Source saying, I am in this field of all consciousness, and I'm going to manifest myself in all of these different forms, and the cosmic human is going to be the expression of all of these different parts, and how do I be within it? If we were able to hold that, we would be the Adamic being. We would be the Terranusian being or the Orifem being or the beings, the original cosmic human. And maybe you can expand on this in Stellar Nations perspective, but the original cosmic human was never in fall.
No, no, that's it. No, in the Garden of Birth, the God and the goddess are, that's the model. It's the face of the creator, right? Not in fall yet at that point.
Yeah, and then it's this bi-Veka system. It's taking the Trinity or the eternal or all the of creation and its connection. So the Trinity, in one way, if we could think of it, is we have the two, the Vesica Pisces. But if it had another circle, this duality would always be reuniting with the 0 point field or the one in this eternal loop, kind of like you were saying earlier, the in breath and the out breath, or the heart. You were using the heartbeat, which is beautiful. The heartbeat always coming back. But at a certain point, we do experience that fall. And I really feel that fall is that place where we got cut off from that 0 point, the eternal flame, and went into this polarity and this duality, where now we're looped in this physical matter of polarity. And so I'd love to maybe get into just the Stellar Nations story, because I know it's very interesting to me that the Centaurus constellation, and let me kind of finish this aspect of the tie-in. It's the centaur, but it very distinctly also has the terminology Taurus in there.
Mhm.
And I hopefully will be able to tie this in, because in all the Voyagers materials and all of our stellar maps, this ties us into the stargates, and that The Taurus cloud and the Taurus constellation, and the Centaurus constellation specifically, has a very unique connection to Alcyone
Mhm.
and the Pleiadian star system. And within this, these are stargates that create this linking, but these are also the ones that have been hijacked. And I think this ties in with the story where Alpha Centauri also ties into the story of Electra. So I
Yeah,
love the
I can
polarity.
start. I mean, it's a big web. It starts on many different, you know, iterations, energy centers or stars. Do you want me to start to address it now, or do you want to?
Dive right in.
Okay, so what you do have is in the stellar nations, the Centaurus constellation does represent Chiron. It does represent it's an embodiment of our deepest wound in the way the dynamics work out. So, but it all comes throughout this history and these energy patterns, right? So let's start with the fact that you've got the claws of the scorpion, you've got Zujin Elbanubi and Zubin Eshamali, right? At one point, they are the recruiting stations. The Eshamali has an M in it, so I remember it's the male serpent recruiting station, and the Eshelnubi is the female serpent. Now we're really operating at a low octave at this point, right? Because there's all kinds of choices of experiencing, right? And so we've got this whole layer of low octave stuff that's happening because if you think of it as frequency, it's vibration, you get an idea, it goes out to all sentient creation and gets vibrated with it, and it's like, oh, do I want to do that? Do I want to go try that instead of staying over here? So that's how it's like a virus, right? It comes in. So at a very low octave, the recruiting stations for the male and female serpent, who are like, yeah, for all the other reasons that we know of, um, the male serpent watches that the bears are getting all their students. It's like, what? They're too simple. They're just telling people to follow the heart, and they're stealing our students. So they want to get back at the bears, but they don't want to do it. So they they influence the low octave feminine, and the feminine's like, yeah, look at that. Oh no. So the low octave feminine, in her all her wiles and everything, this is kind of metaphorical. She has a poison in essence that she throws into Chiron. But what she's doing is she's putting a spell on him, right? Now, I believe that the Hadar or the Agina or the Beta Centauri is where the temptation goes in. So think about it in our human terms. Sometimes how you're like, you've done something and you're like, where was my head? Why did I do that? Like, you're subject to whatever, the pressure, or you go along with the crowd. Well, it's kind of like Chiron was in that space. That's how he got duped. He got drugged in essence, which I find very interesting because right near there, and when you see star configurations come together on an Antares code, the initiation for the dragon in Alcaraz, which is the initiation into the use of the air element, which metaphorically is thought, that comes with the fact that uh, Chiron's thought through Agina or Hader, I'm not trying to say it, was totally co-opted. So in that state and in his rage, he he kind of got the rage of the feminine that got the rage of the masculine. I got to attack them. Yeah, I got to get on the Southern Cross. And his back leg, where Gamma Satori is, right over Gakru, which is the divine principle of mercy, tramples on this whole uh, the divine principles of creation into the Crew constellation. So as an end result, when Chiron comes to, in essence, or us, if this is a metaphor for our deepest wound, it's like we were somehow taken over by some force. We did something that was like we're now deeply ashamed of. We realize, oh my God, we trampled on creation right at the heart of it. And we trampled on mercy, the very principle, the river that the God force says is, you can always come back to me. because I have this river of grace and mercy, and redemption is always possible. And yet we've got to go, oh my God, I've got to surrender enough to accept the very thing that I've just crushed in my. So there's that whole like emotional complex in this Centaurus constellation. But we haven't talked about what Bungala is. I'll get there, or Alpha Centauri. So that's no, that the story even goes further because um that Lupus constellation there, that's right there.
Nihao,
Uh,
how are you?
Bay and Anako were shown in the year of the bears, that actually when the Christ soul came in the form of Jesus, and there were a lot of Roman soldiers wandering around who were lost dragons. You know, they kind of like, ah, what is this? What are we doing? And he actually took one in particular under his wing who became aware that he could have a new mission as a warrior. He could be a warrior of light, in essence. He could be a guard for the temple of the heart. He could guard the Southern Cross or the heart. So that's a whole new strain of warrior, and the dragon's called the Jeromean warrior. But there's a whole thing where Chiron actually had to attack the wolf who was guarding the Southern Cross, and that's a whole other little set of stars and dynamics.
Mhm.
Um, but it's a new strain of warrior that really will stand up for the temple of the heart, for the Christ principle. Um, so getting now that's there, but what's Alpha Centauri as far as the stellar nations or Bungala? So it goes back really. We see all this low octave stuff happening, but where else does it happen? I mean, there's the energy patterns of the after the first galactic war, let's say, is resolved in a way by all the fallen ones being pulled into the karmic prison of the Cetus constellation, or Beta and Catos. And it's a place where you can, look and decide if you want redemption, you can be born from there. And that was the whole idea in the divine mind, have this neat little pattern. Oh, people will realize, or, creation will realize it can have redemption and this. But there were beings who weren't, just couldn't accept that. They didn't want to give up their they didn't want to be redeemed. They wanted to keep their sense of power or whatever. They were liking their game. And finally the creator said, look, they're just not going to learn anything in here. They need to be released for more experiencing and, continue this experiment. So at that point, we had reincarnations of the fallen dragon and a fallen angel leader. Whatever is suppressed comes up, right? So the vibration came up again. Big cry for, oh, remember the glory days of the dragons. This has to do a lot with the 666 and all these mythical things that we have in our lore. Um, and the dragon and the angel, the reincarnated, decided to merge in an act of black magic. And they did that on Algol. And at that point, it just attracted all the shadow forces. So there became a great army of the fallen dragons, the fallen angels, the fallen arthropods, and the fallen male serpents. And that's kind of all hell broke loose and Second Galactic War starts. But we have these, especially with the combination of the fallen angel and the fallen dragon, they know their powers. I mean, they can still be beautiful like an angel. They have the raw power of the dragon, but they've lowered in consciousness. They don't have the same kind of access anymore. And they have this huge sexual power, appetite or something because of their merger. So in the stellar nations, that's when they take over. Bungala is really their base for the black magic and for casting the tantric nets. And Bungala is exactly opposite. Bungala is in Scorpio. We got it opposite Electra.
Mhm.
And the daughters of Electra at that point in the Pleiades were this is the feminine who's like so missing the goddess, because with a great feline expulsion, uh, they want the goddess expulsion. It's like, let's find the goddess again. And these are cosmic humans on Electra being taking up the lineage and learning the line of the female serpent, the tantric mysteries. So they're in the middle of being trained in this and loving it, and just beautiful creatures, really a deep innocence. Um, and the forces from Bungar are like, oh, perfect. We'll go invade them because we can use their light bodies. We can take them over. We can take them over physically and spiritually, and we can use their light bodies to get to the higher dimensions, to get the information we want. So, we have that whole pattern in in life. Certain women get, I mean, there are, if you have a history really of being there, you may still have auric seals in your pelvis. You may have, you may be tied in. You may sometimes get attached to guys, and it's like you're looking at a good friend. What's wrong? Why does she keep doing that? It's just a pattern that has to be overcome. But lately, I'm also realizing, wait a minute, this whole thing is a metaphor also. It's not just like this Electra feminine who's been breached. Everything you're talking about now, in this third galactic war of consciousness, we ourselves, are being breached. This whole source of energy that would like to be perhaps, staying on the divine matrix or moving towards it, uh, what we see with these fallen ones, there's no way to get energy except to take it, right? Because they're pretty much constricted to the fourth dimension, not much higher unless they use it. Um, so anyway, I'll stop there. That's kind of some of the little Stellar Nations mythology that
I love that. And then this is so amazing. So I want to flip it out and then flip it back in.
okay.
This is what's so amazing. You brought up the word Vega a couple of times, which is quite profound because that does have a huge energy around the dragons. And you made a comment too where um as Chiron got kind of pulled into the whole thing, he did something and then kind of questioned why he did it. I think it might be helpful. Let's bounce out in history a little bit and then let's bounce back in because Chiron is basically a child of rape. He is a child that was created, please forgive me if I get the name wrong, but I want to say it was Zeus. Um, but basically, Zeus had his eye on a particular nymph, really wanted her. She was trying to get away from him. He changed form and basically took her by force, and Chiron is that child. So he is the progeny of this mixed genetics. And let's take this backwards a little bit further. And I do want to show a graph just really, really quickly, just to kind of tie just a couple more things in. This is so amazing. I love this. Leslie, you're amazing. So let's go ahead and look at our universal galactic planetary and then body energy, because this is really going to be key. We want to see part of what Leslie and I have been talking about is exploring a lot of these different stargates. So we decided to start with Alpha Centauri, and I think it's actually really profound. Why did we start with Alpha Centauri? I actually feel it was divinely guided. So we have Alpha Centauri here on the Universal Stargate. It is actually the Stargate number 3, which corresponds directly to the Earth Stargate. So it, even on another level, directly connects to our Earth template. It is the higher octave in some ways of a lot of the Earth history that is going on. It's also going to connect to South Africa, Bermuda, and then where does it connect within our body? Our ovaries. So, and then for the men, it's the gonads. It's the sexual energy centers within there is where this energy of Alpha Centauri is actually influencing and tying in. And I just love how, I've never thought of it in this perspective, but it does tie in. Now, here's where we start to get the next vibrational energies of some of these Stargate energies up. We can see, obviously, there is a channel that leads to the Pleiades within Alcyone, but there's also another vibration that moves up from Sirius to Andromeda. But what we want to do is actually tie in this one. We're going to go diagonal as just a little bit of the story of the distorted field. So Alpha Centauri going on a diagonal line is going to connect to Pleiades, is actually then going to connect to the Omega. So this is where we get the Alpha and the Omega and that Stargate in the Pleiades. And then where does Arcturus Omega lead into? So Omega Centauri and Arcturus are two totally different things, but actually the Arcturians are highly involved with this. And just as a kind of summary of this, this is all referring to different types of Anunnaki races. Anunnakis, these are all variations of the Anu Elohim and later variations of the Anu Seraphim race lines and beings that are connected within here, and it moves up to Vega. Now, one of the interesting things as we look at Vega, Vega is at different times our North Star, our polar star. And I don't have the image up for you, but I have shown the Earth on a tilt before. And when the Earth is on a tilt, it is aligned to the North Star Polaris. Polaris is not aligning us to our true north, but if we were in our true north, Vega would be this true north. But we know that within this energy of Vega, and I'll go ahead and I just wanted to show this as just a tie-in for some of this. If we were to look at our North Star of Vega, Vega is where we're going to have that fall and that cataclysm. It's directly even connected within the Voyager's materials to the fall of the dragons. So what this is also a masculine feminine type of battle within there, but within Vega, and I want to tie this in for you, Leslie, because this is amazing. You're talking about these beings, they went into fall, they didn't want to give up their power. That is the absolute description of these fallen Elohim beings. And what they did is they actually purposefully disconnected part of their DNA template so that they didn't plug back up into the Christ consciousness, so that they couldn't be hijacked by higher dimensional beings and they could have their party and run things the way that they wanted to. And this is the massive thing within Vega right now. Vega for us ties us into our Pluto, which also has a huge correlation in the stellar nations to the Chiron or the Centaurs. So I'm going very lateral here, but if you were to look up even Pluto as a stargate, we have this connection in here of the wound, the hidden wounds within that need to be brought to the surface. So the war, I'm taking this all the way back to the Vega Wars, the Lyran Wars.
Right. And that's right in the stellar nations because
Yes.
it's the right use of power and the dragons don't get it. And the winged lions, they're supposed to protect the winged lions, which are letting the divine flow through them. So then you have the dragon energies to uphold that ability to just be a vessel for the divine. The
Mhm.
dragons don't get it. They're like, oh, the creator made a mistake. I have all this. I look at, I can do this with fire. I can do that. No, no, I should be the leader. And you're right. They cut the gnosis threads. They're
Yeah. So we have these Lyran wars. Well, during these Lyran wars, we have mass migrations of refugees looking for new places. And one of those primary places is Alpha Centauri.
oh,
Alpha
interesting.
Centauris are primarily Pleiadian Lyran beings. And as kind of a set Stargate or template of this energy, they do have a huge vibrational connection to the earth. So I think it's helpful to kind of recognize, even within the story of Chiron, I hurt Christ consciousness and I don't know why. Well, it's like we can even see through the Lyran Wars, now we have all of these migrations that are going. At this particular time, the Orion Wars are doing their thing, and now all of these hybridized races are coming. And I just want to share one more thing, and then I want to hand it over to you so that you can play with what some of this is. Because as we look at this, then we're going to see, oh, that working within these energies, what are some of these hybrid races? What are some of these races that start to get created? And these are the 100% the very players that are happening on this planet. You can see that some of these very agreements were broken as early or there's more that are happening right now, but some of these that we're talking about right now are going to be talking about even just 1992 here. So within here, we have all of these fallen beings. So this is tying into the serpents that you were talking about coming from the Sirius A system. So right here, Sirius A. As we get to look at these are going to be primarily different Anunnaki hybridized race lines from the original Anunnakis. They began to breed. So just as Leslie was saying, many of them were very sexified, wanting to get with, say, the daughters of Electra and to capture the nymphs and capture these beautiful beings and to procreate with them and create with them. Well, now we have all of these different variations that have come from and are connected to right within here. So we have the Jehovian Sirius A Anunnaki that have been running the Galactic Federation and the Ashtar Command. They have defected from the Emerald Covenant and they have been working against. So many of these are the race lines that are directly influencing a lot of the things we're seeing on the surface Earth. We have the Archangel Michael Neophyte Nephilim Necromatron, the Anunnaki hybrid collective of Orion, Alpha Centauri, Sirius A, and Andromeda. So what this is this particular race line is a complete hybridization of an Anunnaki lineage that's blended with Orion starseed, Alpha Centauri, Sirius A, and Andromeda. And these are all defected race lines attributed to these thousand-year wars. We have the Anu Seraphim, which are connected to the Alpha Omega Order of the Templar Melchizedeks. Now, these ones are the ones that were very deceptive. These particular beings primarily tried to act like they were in our assisting the Christ consciousness, because what they were is they were the hijacked Melchizedeks. So they posed as the divine blue-ray Melchizedek's energy. They took over the Templar codes. They took over the knowledge. So even as Leslie's saying within the stellar nations, it's like they get jealous of, say, maybe the Christ consciousness beings because your message is too simple. So we're going to hijack it. We're going to twist it. And since everybody's gravitating towards it, let's take it. Let's run with it. So these are going to be beings that were in competition with these first ones, these Jehovian race lines. Now there was the Toth Enki. This is the Zephylium, so they're a blend of Zeta race lines. They have blended in with the Toth, the Enki lineage lines, the Anunnaki collective, and they're connected to the Nibiru star system and Sirius A. They used to be in alignment with the Emerald Order, but they also defected to join the Luciferian rebellion and kind of run on their own. And then, of course, with the final one, so the two that really caused us the most damage are the Toth Enkis and the Enoch Jehovian Anunnaki. They are collected from the Arcturus. They are a phantom Arcturian and a phantom race line also connected with Orion. And then the last one, the Anu Seraphim Pleiadian Samjazi Anunnaki of Alcyone and their Enlil Odedicron Marduk Necromatron Nibiruan allies. I know it's a mouthful within these, but primarily when we even see these race lines, these are going to be the ones that are connected to a lot of the arthropods, so the beetle people, so the insectoid race lines, the spider, the dragon moths, a lot of this AI, this control and this interface of this one world order. All of these beings work for a trajectory of one world order. They're connected to a lot of the military forces because, again, the fallen dragons in these race lines want to run more in a hierarchy or a military type of thing. So the men in black connected to these centaurs. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring this up is for us to have an understanding that when we start moving down into further densities, into kind of further levels of creation, if we are the cosmic human, we have all of these stories playing within us. And it's really important to understand that even at some of the higher dimensional levels where we're working with beings that actually hold a lot of cosmic wisdom and templates of creation, they've still chosen power. And that's what I think about is interesting about just the entire Centaurus constellation is that Alpha Centauri alone is connected to the dragons. All the other ones are connected to the Christ consciousness
I
bear.
know. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And actually, you know what, the Alpha Centauri orb, I mean, in the Stellar Nations book, the tree of life is that shape, the same thing. Um, Male serpent's tree of life. That orb is the knowledge of biology. What's interesting because you're talking about it being associated with the body and earth.
Mhm.
So, and actually, where you saw the Pleiadians, that's the knowledge of rebirth, and that's really like the center temple that was fought over a lot because the ability to reborn. I mean, that's what the fallen ones would love, the knowledge of rebirth, but they don't have the energy for it in the right way. They have to steal energy. But anyway, okay, so here's a thought. I mean, I always, as you go through all that, I'm sort of thinking like, isn't this interesting? Like, if we were to be containers of those forms and frames of experience, but we said, no, we don't want to do that as humans. It's like we literally let all these forces out to be rogue, to just explore, to find, but not have any like, I mean, it's almost like Chiron Chiron has multiple levels of wounds. They say that in the Stone Nations too, but probably his deepest one and that we can take on too is being overcome and trampling on creation, the Christ principle. Um, so what do I want to say with this? Yeah, I don't know. Even though everything's gone rogue, it's like it just makes our job harder. It's like we're supposed to balance and harmonize these forces, the masculine and feminine and these 13 stellar nations within us. Now, does that mean that all this is, now that it's become this, and this? I don't know. I'm just
Yeah, and this is, I think this is where it starts to get into a bit more of a quantum perspective within things. If we even kind of think back to that bubble graph I was showing of all of the different probabilities and realities, that when we talk about moving towards potential future timelines, that every action, it is always fascinating to kind of watch certain movies that it's like, oh, if you had made this choice, maybe your life would have turned out this way. If you would have made this choice, maybe your life would have turned out this way. Well, those are on a very small, minuscule scale, potential or probable timelines that we could go on, and that within every probable timeline, we can see that in certain ways, those timelines might actually turn out to be evolutionary, quite Christic and beautiful. Others, sources getting the opportunity to go like, oh, well, I see if that probable timeline keeps playing out, then hey, then that's going to be a full fall and a full collapse. But if we actually look at this and go back to the very first stuff you were saying in the beginning, which is important, is that source really truly is this eternal field. And I don't remember exactly the word you used, but it was just this idea of this eternal field that is able to have all potentiality within it, but doesn't have the ability to go out and be the experience. And so even within that, there is many times just this contemplation that comes is source also seeing what all of these probabilities might be like. And then as our Christ consciousness heart awakens, we can awaken within those darkest places. And when it awakens, we actually have the ability to fully link back to source manifestation and begin to go like, oh, okay, yeah, that was fun, but I'm not choosing that anymore. I'm going to collapse this line. I'm going to collapse this one. I'm going to collapse this probability. And we actually do have the ability to many times shut down the very portals that have been siphoning our energy in order to move that trajectory back towards that initial purpose of the Christ consciousness humans, or sorry, the cosmic humans, which is bringing it all together, bringing it
right.
all together.
Yeah. So I would say a couple things on that. I remembered a few. I have to write down my points. I'm forgetting them. Um, I just forgot the first point I was going to say in relation. But I do want to say it's good that you're talking about this in terms of timelines and shutting down things, because I think that's what when you talked months ago about why are we doing this, we've got to go to the very root to get out this compulsion to go into density, to want power or whatever the material brings. So even in the stellar worlds, in the stars, you're going to see stellar worlds in these myths um, being octaves of experience even within that world. And you know, we can live out a choice in our human life. We, as incarnated, we often mature in those octaves if we have those stellar rays strongly, you know, if our soul is up there expressing through us as a distillate. But so take Arcturus, though. There's a lot of things that have happened like in galactic timelines that maybe we haven't quite adopted yet. So those two in the stellar nations, the two claws, after all this happened with the Chiron trampling on and the claws being you know, used in that way, Archangel Michael actually came down from like the bear it's a bear idea, repurposed the claws into the bear nation, made it the Libra constellation, which is really the Libra constellation is about how do you find that point above the karmic vortexes that are happening. So, and then also Arcturus and Spica, which Spica is the huge angel star. It's non-polarized light. It's just non-polarized. It's where in the stellar nations, it's where the divine mind just keeps launching and opening its cosmic eggs with these ideas. And those eggs are born with the angels right along it, because the angels are going to be the shepherds and the guardians and the, you know, watching over this come into creation and be in creation and maintain it. So you've got Archangel Michael drew a line of energy from Spica to Arcturus because, yes, Arcturus is an eighth dimensional star, and it's literally like the seed of this Kabbalah, which is the organization of how does the divine mind come out with all its ideas. It's the purest spirit, but not when it starts coming into density and use. So there's kind of been, and on the galactic level, there's been this energy line drawn. Now, have we realized it on the human level? Not necessarily, but that's part of our mission or charge. You know, that's our call. And I also wanted to say, in terms of the timelines, you know, closing some down, and we call them timelines because that's our reference points from the third dimensional. But, you know, once we get beyond this dimensional perspective that has to be so linear because of its density, you're just basically calling on energy patterns. And, you know, you can call them past and future. But what it becomes then, it does become that we're at the center point of the constantly rotating infinity symbol, you know, with flowing in past future dynamics, pulling like so. And that is part of the seal of the Maya, Star Maya in the Pleiades. And the Mayans are incredible because the star Maya always comes into the photon belt at the exact same time as the Earth. And the Mayan part of us is that which can be in the dark of the night and see the effect that the shadow has, and doesn't necessarily fall into it, but can maintain an observer stance and take copious notes. All right, this pattern is happening. Oh my God, we're going to have to heal this shadow. Then we come into the light of the photon belt, and it's like the Maya star releases all its observations as frequencies that we now have to, this is like probably part of the cascade of light coming in, we now have to apply to our physicality, our biology, our layers of bodies to work with the shadow, to turn them around, to redeem them. So I'll just stop there. We can keep going. I don't know where you want to go with this.
Well, I think it's really amazing, you know, just getting to explore all of these different perspectives of how a star influences us. That we can see that, you know, from a star seed perspective, to be connected to Alpha Centauri is going to have a duality. And I'd actually like to, since we've talked a little bit about kind of its traumatic energy, I'd actually like to talk a little bit about some of its really positive kind of attributes and energy and how it's actually connected to the earth a little bit. in to know that even planetary systems, like you're saying, like Arcturus, like Sirius A, like even Orion, looking at Vega, let's just kind of stick here with Alpha Centauri. We're going to see that each of them is going to be operating at different octave probabilities. And so there is going to be many times these negative influences that can come from certain things, kind of like the star algol can have a very negative type of energy within one's rays of their chart. Or if you take it at the higher octave, it's going to be a massively high alchemical star to work with as
Exactly.
its rays of energy.
That's the perfect point, to realize it's all embedded in these rays. Like that's the history, the energy pattern, and we have a choice.
Hmm.
Like the Zubin Achinili, I'll let you keep going, but the claws, like we have that in us, but from the lower octave to the higher. And where do we choose to to concentrate our consciousness when we're on earth? What triggers us? Does it trigger to the lower? Can we remember that we want to go to the higher? Or,
Mhm.
so go
Oh,
ahead. I'm sorry I
so much.
interrupted you.
And you made a good point. I love this. We could probably dance all day. So, I mean, and let me kind of flip back to these rays of the positive energy. But even in saying that, you'd made another comment that was really, really profound, and that is that Chiron got pulled in by this by whatever the drama and the trauma and the story was, probably a family drama. Because we're really looking at even his inception would be around the time of, say, what we would think of as the Hyperborean root races. So the Olympians, the Titans, the all of this kind of influence on the earth. And as we look at that, he got pulled into it. So he got sucked into the story. He got sucked into the program and whatever the thoughts were that got in the mind, and then he made that move, that decision to stomp on that Southern Cross, the Christ consciousness bears. Well, and then afterwards going like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? We call that spirit possession. Straight up. As we work with all of, just our awareness now, part of what we're really doing is going, hey, what thoughts are influencing me? Why did I think that thought? Why did I make that choice? Why did I choose that color? Why did I want that? Why am I choosing this? And what we want to do is get into this constant state of curiosity as to our actions within this Maya or creation, so that we can start to become sovereign within it, so that we can go like, oh my gosh, there is an impulse which comes, from a lot of the things that I share. We call this shadow dancer influence that comes. And what this is coming in from a molecular level. So a lot of times you don't know why you have the impulse. You don't know why your impulse to do something, because you actually have an ancestor spirit attached to you or something like this. And so as you learn to start catching the reactions and the impulses, you can actually start to catch these shadow shards within and begin to be that transmutation energy, really be what I think a cosmic human is here to be. The Alpha Centaurians, as another storyline, is really kind of more maybe in a relatable storyline, is they are this really quite advanced race line of beings. They are Lyran descendants, Lyran Pleiadian primarily, and a lot of their consciousness within their field, at what we might say is a higher probability of their existence, is actually these beings that chose to fully start to work in attunement with cosmic creation. So rather than manifest and create things, this race line of beings tends to be really quite mathematically inclined, quite adept at creating things, especially with creative creations materials like crystals, like planetary templates and these kinds of things, not because they're manipulating it, but they spent so much time studying it and learning it. How does a leaf grow? What is a crystal doing? What is the energy field it's emanating? And they learned how to actually harness the energy of natural creation, so what we would call free energy here on our planet. They
Mhm.
learned how to work with that and actually create in harmony with that. So their societal structure is actually, they're kind of like a future advanced cousin race of ours, that when the non-phantom aspects, and we'll just put it that way, the non kind of alpha omega of the alpha Centaurians actually does hold an ability for us to see, even with a race line still holding polarity, their polarity is actually quite incredible. It's showing us how do we start to honor our Earth template. They were one of the races, obviously, since their connection here, that was really involved with developing out a lot of the inner Earth civilizations. They really have, again, massive understanding of planetary structures and building in harmony with the energy fields of a planet. So one of their mottos, those that run off of the Christic template, is, why would you ever do anything that would hurt your planet? Your planet is your home, and it's the
Mhm.
only reason why you're alive right now. So why would
Your
you hurt
body.
your planet? And so I wanted to present that as, I know we've danced around, but I'd love to bring forward some of the incredible energy that it brings, because it's, again, that Stargate directly connected to Earth. So if we can start to embrace it, they show us how to pull into a positive trajectory.
No, that's beautiful. And I think, it's not in the stellar nations in that way for that star, but it's the whole, but stellar nations is everything is about the quality of redemption. Everything is moving towards redemption, and you're bringing the alpha to the omega. So but it's just doing it in a different little bit of a mythical form that's, not as, well, historical, if you will. Um,
Yeah,
Actually, I have this. Can I just read a quote? I just found this quote last week that I just love.
please.
It's our one thing has become evident. Our culture has little understanding of the purpose of myth or the role of myth maker. Myths are not for believing or disbelieving, they are for using. If a myth or metaphor works in revamping our deepest values, it is truer than the evening news or the textbook fact. Myth, poetry, art, and music are truths of a different dimension, sustenance and regeneration for the tired spirit. And the human brain learns best by story, game, frameworks of meaning. So,
I love that.
I think, I would just say that's a little bit more the Stellar Nations perspective, is just to sort of play from the inside with everything that you're saying, but sort of to find somehow, um, where our energy patterns want to be balanced.
And I think that's a perfect place to kind of summarize everything, with the mythos and the energy of it, that we could even see all of our galactic history as just these different stories, these different myths that are playing out within us. And if it is as above, so below, then we would see that Alpha Centauri very much is connected to our Earth body. And that Earth body is very much connected to our sexual energy centers, and that as we heal those energies within ourselves, we start to bring the balance to it. We start to dissolve the stories that are within there. And for those of you that are my flame holders, this is something we talk about all the time, which is really clearing out the womb chakra, or
Right.
empowering the womb chakra as it's a container for our soul to be a divine expression, with no comma, no desire, no distractions that are coming from any of these polarities, but really more from the divine attunement.
It's the womb, it's the chalice, right? To be the cosmic human. And I'll leave you with a, Vega. So I think it was the end of 2017, or the year of the cosmic humans, Bayonautical were shown. So Sophia brought up from the center of the earth 7 seeds of life and said, over the next X years, you'll be getting instructions to plant them.
Mm.
So there was planting on aspects of the earth over time. And there's a whole ceremony. Their group, when they get those energies, they work like in all day, kind of mystery play ways where they're anchoring in. So to activate these seeds that were coming up, that were meant to be helping with us adapt biologically to life and all these changes, and And within the radius of the seed, the human who could really want to evolve with all these forces would be helped by it. If you just didn't feel like you could do it, you'd leave the area. So there was a point at which they were all planted in the um, Earth spaces, and then it came into different stars. And the 13th seed is about to be planted, and it is well, let me stop and say one of the ways they work with anchoring it, it's called turning the redemption key. And they have pairs of 4 people with representing different holy forces. And it's a whole ritualistic play. And sometimes the energy doesn't work. Like they may have been trying to plant something and couldn't turn the redemption key, might have had to try it again. It's not like just because, oh, we're going to do this mystery play, it's going to work. But on the solstice, they're having their grand day, which is always full of like 120 people doing these anchorings. And the day is full of many things. But the culminating mystery play is they've been asked to plant the key, turn, that's what I want to say, turn the redemption key for Vega. So you guys can think about that. Add your energy because you all know what that means.
Oh, incredible, Leslie. Again, I always enjoy our conversations. They just kind of awaken so many new thoughts and new probabilities to just kind of awaken how we be this great gift in this lifetime. So I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. I thank your generosity. You're so generous about just welcoming in ideas. I appreciate that. Thanks.